Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're in another episode of Scranton Talks. Today, Tony Susi joins us as guest host. Thank you, Tony.
Glad to be here.
And for those who don't know me, my name is Luz Cabrales. I am the co-founder of the Independent Film Creative Hub, as well as the founder of Scranton Films, where we try to foster young creatives and filmmakers, anyone who wants to join and be part of the filmmaking community. And we have this show to inspire and motivate filmmakers, those who are just starting out and those who are veterans in the industry. Tony, thank you so much. Do you want to do a little update on what we've been doing and just where people can find us?
Sure, yeah, we're very excited to bring you another episode of Scranton Talks through our social media platforms and through our Independent Film Creative Hub network. Make sure you sign up at ourcreativehub.com to stay updated on local projects and connect with local filmmakers, as well as collaborate on projects together. Remember, this community is for you guys, so only you can help us grow, so sign up today. It's free and it's super easy, so it's really exciting.
Thank you, Tony. And today we have a very special episode with Joe Dain from Terror Films. He is going to talk to us a little bit about his journey as a filmmaker, as an industry professional, as well as his distribution company, Terror Films. For those looking to or are in the middle of making their film, and they don't know where to take it next or how to get started as far as getting that film distributed and just getting it out into the world. We are making some art and we want people to see it. And this is, after all, a business as well. So, kind of how those two things are going to mix.
I want to know about Joe Dain, and you're the only one that can tell me. What about Joe Dain?
This is going to be a good one.
Mind if I ask you a few questions?
We're not here to rescue a bunch of scientists, just one.
Both your parents are dead.
We got a nickname for you, son. Flash.
Wesley thought he could contain it. It's down here for a reason.
Seriously?
You're a natural. It's got a story. Want to hear it?
Oh my God.
I want to hear more.
Sound good?
How are you?
Thank you so much for being here and taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to us more about your creative journey. So we're going to try not to take too much of your time. So we have a couple questions, but anything that can pop up, you just let us know. I'm sure people that are going to be watching this show will benefit from this conversation. So we'll start it out with you have been an actor, UPM, line producer, executive producer. I mean, you've done pretty much a lot of the things that are in the industry, and you're also a distributor. But tell us more about just kind of how you got started in the filmmaking industry or entertainment industry.
Sure. Well, many years ago, I was lucky enough. I ended up going to the High School for Creative and Performing Arts here in Philadelphia, where I met some incredible people and was lucky enough to actually find a talent manager. And at the age of 19, me and a couple of friends packed our bags and moved to New York City. I went to a conservatory for several years. Then I ended up moving to Los Angeles. And I keep coming back to saying that I was lucky. I worked in TV movies. I worked in HBO movies. I worked in episodic. But one of the things that I kept sort of finding myself coming back to was this fascination with how all of it came together, and being a young actor who's stepping out and seeing all of these people and these trucks and the cameras and the equipment, and I really was so fascinated by that part of it. And so I started to really lean in that direction. And I started doing any kind of little, student films, short films, PAs, anything where I could sort of be involved in the physical aspect of the business and start really learning it. And then I was very lucky. I had 3 opportunities when I was about my mid-20s. One was to take a job in the mailroom of a top tier 5 agency. One was to take a job in the mailroom of a major movie studio. And the other one was to take a runner position at an independent horror film company called Full Moon Features. And now there might be people listening to this who know that. It's a very iconic company. It's been around since the 90s. The Goalies, the Puppet Masters, I mean, they've launched, huge careers. Some of the biggest people working in the business started their career at Full Moon Features. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not really interested in the corporate side, the big agency, the studio side. So I took the job as the runner. And essentially as the runner, I had an opportunity to kind of work with every department. It was sort of like a mini studio. They had everything from, their own in-house video sales to marketing, to legal, to graphic design. They were sort of a one-stop shop in that sense, in the micro budget space, obviously. But I found myself getting to get familiar with things a lot faster than I would have had I taken a job in a mailroom, and probably took another year and a half to work my way up to being an assistant for some horrible executive that was screaming at me all the time. So I seized on the opportunity with the idea of, okay, let me get what I can out of it, and I'll move on when the time is right. And I remembered when I got that job, the woman who was the office manager at the time had been with the company for about a decade. And I remember her specifically saying to me, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, I'm interested in working for company." And she was like, "Well, I just want you to know you're not going to move up. There's no opportunities here. I've been here 10 years and I'm still the office manager." And I thought, okay, listen, that is what it is. That's fine. I'm not going to be discouraged by you. And oddly enough, I've been there about 6 months. When the person who was the head of video sales at the time called me into his office, and his name was Devin Hamilton, great guy. I'm still friends with him today. And he said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I looked you up." He says, "You're an actor." Now, I had just come off of a soap opera, actually, and I had some decent credits. And so he was sort of like, "I don't understand. Why are you the runner here? What are you doing?" And so I explained to him, what I was interested in doing and what I was interested in learning. And he says, "Okay." He says, "Well," he goes, "the company just gave me money to finance a film I wrote and I'm going to direct. And what do you think about being the lead in the movie?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll be the lead in the movie if I can co-produce the movie." And he said, "Deal." Now that movie was a goofy little, just sort of comedy horror called Delta Delta Die, starring Scream Queen Julie Strain. And that not only led to me being involved with the next couple of films that the company was producing, I actually got promoted to the in-house unit production manager. And within 2 years, I was their head of production. And so for 5 years, I ended up overseeing the entire slate of films, had formed my own company in order to garner production credits, which was a deal that I cut with the president of the company at that time, and got everything out of it. And I am certainly giving you a truncated version of that journey. But my point is that I seized on an opportunity to learn and to take advantage of a situation, and every turn a new opportunity sort of presented itself to me, and I jumped on it, really with this idea of like, I don't know where this is going to take me, right? I don't know where this is going to take me, but I had nothing to lose by trying this and jumping into this. And I was always of the opinion of, sort of that fake it till you make it kind of thing, that idea of like, there was a lot of stuff I had to learn along the way, and I didn't understand how to create budgets. There were just things I did not know, but I learned them, right? I went out of my way to learn them and ask. I wasn't afraid to ask questions. There was no ego involved for me in saying, how do I do this? Show me so I don't completely screw it up. And then after I left Full Moon, for a while, I ran my own shingle called Shoot Productions, which was the label that was also getting credits with Full Moon. I turned that into a service production entity. I went on to do a couple of strange partnerships and a couple of different companies. I produced a lot of sort of independent content. That took me really all the way through until about the end of 2010, when I ended up joining a company called Sunrise Pictures. Now, at the time, the company was going through a transition. They were sort of changing management, all this kind of stuff, and they needed somebody to kind of see through a few details on a handful of their films. And so at the time, my production company, Shoot, had its own consultation division, so we were able to come in. Well, the company was so happy with what I did that when they were going through the transition, they thought, well, hey, we need somebody here that understands physical production, understands finance. And so I ended up joining, and they made me an offer, and I ended up joining them as their head of production and finance. And I oversaw films, different parts of it. So that company produced movies like the Whistleblower with Rachel Weisz, that Samuel Goldwyn Studios put out in theaters in 2011. We did a movie called Father of Invention with a huge cast, including Kevin Spacey when he still had a career. We did a movie with Lifetime with Kate Beckinsale and Nick Nolte called Trials of Cate McCall. You know, we had our hands on a lot of different things, and you know, mostly sort of elevated art house content, to be perfectly frank. And around 2014, I had pitched the idea of producing a handful of micro-budget horror films under the banner. Now, for this company, it was really a business decision. You know, I said, look, we can make these movies. We don't need movie stars. We don't have to spend millions of dollars. And, you know, it's a good business decision. And because I have background in horror and I understood the sort of the insane fan base that was horror, we really thought it was a great idea. The CEO of the company, he loved the idea, did not love the idea of putting horror films under his art house banner. So Jim Clark, Jim is my business partner, and I'll talk about him in a second, but at the time he was the head of acquisitions and development for Sunrise. So we kind of went to the you know, the powers to be and said, look, we think we should not only start another label and finance these handful of horror films, we should be a soup to nuts operation. We should become a distributor. We should really move into the digital, specifically the digital distribution space, which was really starting to kind of get its legs at the time. You know, Netflix was the monster, Amazon, of course, you know, companies like Showtime had been around, HBO had been around, but we were starting to see kind of a trend, right, with some of these other platforms, and having lived through the rise and fall of Blockbuster and Hollywood Video, I sort of thought, well, listen, we're going to see something happen in the digital space I think it's going to shift distribution. So they agreed, and we formed Terror Films. And we, between the end of 2014 and early 2016, we financed and produced 3 original horror films. The Chosen, Patient 7, and Trace were our 3 originals. When we launched the distribution label, which was the end of 2016, it was with 7 movies. So 3 originals and 4 we had acquired up to that point. And then what happened is that something occurred that, you know, none of us could have planned, which was that 3 of the films really took off. And 2 of them were our originals. The Chosen, which at the time that Netflix cared about this, they don't care about this anymore. But at the time, we had an influencer in the lead who had like 4 million followers. And so they actually ended up licensing them exclusively for 2 years, that film, which for a small little horror film, no names, was a pretty significant deal. And then our other original, Patient 7, we had acquired all these incredible short films from filmmakers all over the world. And it sort of ended up with kind of we were going for a theme, but then we ended up with sort of a hodgepodge of different films. They were all so great. We were like, what the heck do we do with this? So we had a wraparound written to sew them all together. And by the time that was done, between the wraparound and the short, we had like Michael Ironside, Alfie Allen, Grace Van Dien, Smart, Doug Jones. We had like this like ridiculous, you know, cast of characters and comprised of these short films that were just such a cut above as far as the production matter. And so all of the horror outlets, the big horror outlets, kind of just shine a lot of love on us. And then there was a little film, a little found footage film that nobody wanted because everybody kept telling the filmmaker that found footage was dead. And that film was Hell House LLC. And for the horror fans out there, for the Indian horror fans, you're probably going to know this film because it turned out to become one of the most talked about, coveted, kind of cult status, straight to digital independent horror films, probably a decade, if not more. It spawned 2 more films, and there's actually a 4th an origin story that we're going to be releasing in October in a partnership with Shudder. So we were in the spotlight, I think, very quickly as a distributor, and it wasn't just the attention that we got from those films, but it was also because we're a company comprised of filmmakers. So the team that runs the company, we've done it all: acting, writing, directing, producing, casting, editing, you name it, we do it. We still do it. My business partner, Jim Clock, who heads up the acquisitions development side of Terror Films, works all the time as an actor in pretty significant stuff, big movies, big TV shows. He actually has 2 films that he's written and directed that are under our horror label. He's got a documentary coming out under our sister label. Our head of marketing, she took off 6 months ago because she's a little crowdfunding and raised the money for her horror film that she shot that we're going to put out. So it's really in our guts. We still do it. We're not just a bunch of goofy executives sitting around, thinking we understand distribution. We really wanted to do something different, and especially in the independent space, because you just don't see the kind of support for independent films in the traditional distribution space. They're just not doing a whole lot for these films other than sort of just dumping them onto platforms. And we really wanted to build brands. We came to our sister label because what happened was we got so much attention so quickly. We started getting dramas and comedies and documentaries submitted to us, and we were like, well, we can't take these because we're a company. So, went to Jim and I said, well, Jim, what do you think? Why don't we start a sister label? And he was like, sounds great. And he was like, we'll just kind of mimic what we're doing, but we'll open it up to, other genres outside of horror. And that was the birth of Global Digital Releasing, which officially launched in May of 2017. So almost a year from the time we launched Terror Films. And we recently made a decision with that company where we're really just focusing on documentaries. I mean, we've got some incredible foreign films and art house films and different things like that on the low. We've seen this kind of really intense just growth in our documentaries. And so we really thought it would make sense to shift gears and focus just on documentaries and become, more of a focused niche company, a lot like Terror Films is, and really sort of be able to stand, alone in versus being caught up in kind of all the competition that's out there with mid-level distributors taking on all kinds of content. So that's kind of a little bit of the journey in a nutshell. I know there was a lot, but I've always been somebody who just showed up and was always eyes wide open for any opportunity that I think might be something to grab onto and take somewhere. And I never allowed myself to sort of get in my own way about I'm only going to do this or I'm only going to do that. I wait until this happens. And I think that we can be our own worst enemy, especially in this industry, which is incredibly unforgiving. And to some level doesn't give a crap about you, right? But I think that being said, we're in such an interesting time now. I mean, I'm going to be 51, and there are things now available to filmmakers that they didn't exist even in the slightest way when I started in this business. One of those things is the accessibility of cameras, the accessibility of editing software, right? These things that when I started were tens of thousands of dollars are now, I mean, listen, the fact is that everybody's got a camera in their hand, right? I mean, our iPhones to shoot 4K for Christ's sake. So, we're at a time where filmmakers have really no excuse to not create content. Not only do they have the accessibility of cameras and software and everything at their fingertips for next to nothing, you also have access to social media. You can create a YouTube channel to put out content. You also have aggregation companies. The birth of aggregation companies really came from a need, mostly from major platforms, to say, hey, look, we can't facilitate all these direct partnerships with all the content companies, right? And what those aggregators did, a couple of them got smart and said, well, yeah, we'll service all studios for the platforms, but what we're also going to do? We're going to open up a filmmaker division. So if somebody comes along with their little film and they want to pay us some fees, we'll go drop it on the platforms for them. So aside from now not only having access to set up your own channels, shoot your own content, you have the ability to go and place it on major platforms like Amazon, like Tubi, like Apple, without a distributor, right? And I've talked a lot about this, and not because I'm ever trying to talk us out of business, right? Because I certainly believe we bring things to the table that help elevate content. But it's important for filmmakers to understand that they have options, and they have choices, and they have access to the film industry in a way that did not exist even 10 years ago. So when I hear any filmmaker bitching and complaining about anything, I want to tell them to shut up and do homework and write something and shoot something and get it out there and stop making excuses. And don't worry about it. Maybe the first thing you do is going to suck. Maybe the first 5 things you do are going to suck. Mm-hmm. But don't go anywhere unless you start trying, unless you start putting things out there, and unless you start taking a swing at it. And the other way to do that is to surround yourself by like-minded people. Go out and find those people that are trying to do the same thing. Maybe you're a terrible writer. Go find somebody that's got a script, right? Go find a way to be creative. Maybe you don't have a lot of money for a budget. Find something where you could shoot at mom and dad's house, or your aunt's house, or your uncle's house, or listen, I mean, go rent an Airbnb, right? Go find a way. There's a way. Go crowdfund, right? That's another thing that's happening today, at a rate that people aren't really paying attention to. Is crowdfunding's out there, and there's a lot of people in the space that are happy to donate, right, to an independent film maker. So, so to me, it was a much harder journey for someone like me in my time frame than I believe that it is. And I don't mean to say that it's not difficult for the career. 100%. I mean, it certainly is. But to be able to go out and shoot something and put something together and put it out there for the world and get credits and get experience, that's easier than it's ever been. It's easier than it's ever been. And there's literally zero excuses for filmmakers today. You don't need to go. This is something I always upset parents, because a lot of times I'll speak at actual like high school. I just actually spoke at for the city of Philadelphia. I spoke at the Senior Success Seminar for seniors, and it was specifically to the student body that was in schools that had programs that had video and television programs. And one of the things that I talked openly about was the idea that you didn't necessarily need to go to college to have a career in the entertainment business. And in fact, what I always try to tell people is that, look, just because you go and you graduate from some incredible film school does not guarantee that you're going to get a job. And in fact, a job may be a minimum wage job as an assistant in some, situation, whether you're like a PA or whether you're a director's assistant or whatever it is. So I'm always trying to educate people on this idea that you can just go out there and do it. You can go out there and do it. I'm not saying don't go to film school if that's your passion, your journey. It's not to say that you won't learn from that. But I always like to sort of make sure that they understand that this is the only industry, really, in my opinion, where having a degree from the best school in the world does not guarantee you a career or a job as a director, as an actor, as a producer, as a screenwriter. It just doesn't matter. Nobody in the studio system, nobody in that kind of finance space is saying, "Hey, where'd you graduate from?" You know what I mean? They're just not. I mean, it's just not a reality, and that's the truth. And so I always say that unless your intention is to go through the corporate ladder, work your way to be a studio executive or something like that.
Right. And I like that you put that without interrupting you, just the way that, in your experience, you were sort of maybe not necessarily working where you needed to be at that time, but you were acquiring relationships, you were meeting new people, you were sort of opening up a new way of doing things that you didn't even know. So I like that idea of filmmakers. Sometimes we feel that I'm not where I need to be, but I think that the way you're saying it, we're learning something different in every position.
You're never gonna feel like you're where you need to be in this business. I think that's one of the things about this industry in particular is that, I've had friends on both the executive side and in the creative side who, got that great position, got that movie, got that opportunity. And then it was about, okay, well, what's next? what's next. And I think that that's one of the most difficult things about this business, is that there's a sense that you're never quite satisfied. You never feel like you've quite done it all, or you feel like you could do better, and you're only as good as your last project or your last job, right? So that's more of a personal challenge that you kind of have to deal with. I would definitely say for the first time in my career, although I didn't know what the journey of going into suddenly becoming a distribution exec was going to mean, I knew that I had enough experience and enough understanding about distribution as a producer. I had been on that side so many times, and I knew what a disappointing distribution model looked like. I knew what I felt like when I felt like a distributor wasn't doing what I hoped, it wasn't giving my film an opportunity. So I at least knew enough from that perspective when it came to starting, kind of the structure of the label. But I had to learn as I went. The truth is that I'm happier now than I've ever been. I wish I could say that I miss producing. I used to love physical producing. Might be an age thing, right? I mean, like I said, I'm in 51, and so I think that it's hard work. Producing's hard work, especially if you're the type of producer I was, which was soup to nuts. I was always on the ground. I was involved from every aspect, from financing to production to creative to post. So I was a very hands-on producer. There are different types of producers, but I was sort of the guy who was always involved all the way through. There was certainly a time that I loved it, but I just don't think I personally don't think I have the energy for it anymore.
Right.
Again, I just think that I guess really the big note that I would want any filmmaker watching this to walk away with is get off your ass and just do something. You have no excuses. You can make excuses for yourself. You can certainly put up your own roadblocks. We all do in our own lives, right? But the truth is that the only one getting in your way from making something is you. Now, look, maybe you want to make a 500 million, crazy big blockbuster movie. Awesome. But you got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere. Well, go shoot something, right? I just read something. It was a few weeks ago. I'm going to blank on the kid's name. Anyways, it was YouTube. He had a YouTube channel, and he was making this kind of really cool sort of sci-fi little movies, and he was doing his own effects and everything like that. Took off, was getting millions of views, and he just got a movie deal with A24. He's 19 years old. That just goes to show you, here was a 19-year-old kid just going out there, just doing it. He's like, you know what? I'm just going to shoot stuff. He learned, visual and special effects. He was putting this all together himself. Launched in my YouTube channel. It took off and got the notice of Hollywood. Right? Now, lightning in a bottle? Absolutely. Not common. But the point is that what if he just decided, oh, this is too hard, or how am I going to do this, or who's going to watch it? No one's going to watch it on YouTube. Like, he could have made a lot of excuses for himself and did nothing. But he didn't, right? He just did it. And now he's got a movie deal at 19 years old as a creative director. So my point is just opportunity is there. The tools are there. Just do it.
Yeah. That's perfect. That's perfect. Hey, go ahead, Tony. I know you wanted to gear a little bit.
Yeah, no, so that being said, I mean, it's wonderful we heard the kind of history of like terror films and stuff, and hearing that like you get a lot of film submissions about distribution. I'm sure you get a ton of those submissions and they're not quite ready for distribution from up-and-coming filmmakers or people who are still learning. So what's the best advice for someone who's looking to either submit a film to Terror Films or to look for distribution? Like, what's the polished edges of something that's submitted that you're like automatically look for and say, oh, no, it's not ready, or, oh, that's something you might want to move forward with? Is it execution based or character story? What is the not criteria, but what's the special sauce that you look for something?
Sure. No, you said, well, honestly, it shifted because, Jim, my business partner, who really is the guy who gets all the submissions. He's the one who watches every single film that comes in, and he's the one that then brings them to me if he thinks it's something that we should consider taking on. One of the things that Jim and I had to learn very quickly in the beginning is we had to kind of remove our personal taste from the process. So that was sort of our own lesson, right? Because, we realized very quickly, hey, wait a minute, it's not for us to say, hey, what we think is a great movie, because the truth is that nobody knows anything in this business. All educated guesses at the highest level. So it got sort of stripped down to this very sort of like, okay, does it have a clear beginning, middle, and end? Is it shot well? Is it acted well? Some very basic boxes, honestly, because, do we feel like it fits into a subgenre under horror that makes sense for us? Is there enough good footage for us to put together a great trailer campaign? So things like that. It honestly started to really get that simple for us, where the idea that we just kind of would say, hey, we're going to polish it up. We're going to be a great trailer, great poster. We're going to bring on a PR team. We're going to launch it out there. We're going to put it on all the platforms. And at some point, you kind of have to hand it over to the audience at large, right? At some point, it's just, it's no longer yours. It's no longer the filmmakers. We do everything we can to get it out there, get it seen. But I would, my best advice to filmmakers would be, take a look at the boxes, right? And in the sense of like, is it a cohesive beginning, middle, and end? If you're that new and you're not sure, why don't you hold a little screening, and not of your family and friends, of people that don't know you, and get a little feedback, get a little honest feedback, right? Is your story resonating? And I'm not talking about you have to go out and rent a theater. I'm saying invite 10 strangers over your living room, right? and or friends of friends that don't necessarily know you, that are to give you maybe honest feedback and see what gets said, see what the reaction is. But also at the same time, just because you submit a film to us or any distributor that might pass on it, doesn't mean that you need to accept that you're not going to be able to get your film out there, which is why I always bring filmmakers back to aggregation companies where you can, literally pay them a service fee, like a per platform fee. Sometimes they'll take like 10% of royalties, but they're going to get it out there, and then you can start promoting it across social media, make a few bucks, at least say you got a film out there. There's so many ways to go about it. So even if you're finding that your film is getting rejected, don't take that as you're not going to have any way to get your film out there. And look, I've known filmmakers who sometimes just say, screw it, and they drop their film on YouTube just to get it out there, just to put it out, to have their content out there in the world. But it is important to be able to the ability to be a critic of yourself and of your work, and step back and be able to say, okay, how does this look? Did I shoot this well? Is it edited decent? How are my performances? And it's even okay if you come to the conclusion that you made a piece of crap, right? It's really okay. But you know what you did? Made something.
Right.
You finished, made the next one better. Yeah. You saw it through. So make the next one better. Learn from your mistakes. Figure out how you can improve, right? And the truth is too, even with learning how to shoot, learning how to light, there's tutorials out there on everything today, right? Like you don't have to even go to school anymore you can learn how to edit on your laptop, right? From watching tutorials online. I mean, there's just so much that you can do today, which is why I keep coming back to filmmakers not really having excuses to not do something. Budget shouldn't be an excuse. Listen, if money's really an option, really a problem, or you don't think you can crowdfund, maybe you tried to crowdfund and it didn't get you anywhere, decide to make a found footage horror film, right? Like a scary ass location that you can get for dirt cheap or maybe absolutely free, and wrap a story around it, and figure out how to build in the found footage aspect to it, and make yourself a found footage horror film. Now, a lot of people take that as a way to be lazy. I'm going to argue that, because some of the scariest movies we have under our banner are found footage films. But that's because they were executed in a way where there was still a good story. There was still some good scares implemented, right? And so, again, there's so many ways to get it done, that there really should be no reason. And even saying, I don't know how to do something. Okay, go learn it. Or go find people around you in your community that are also interested, that maybe know something that you don't. Again, surround yourself by like-minded people. Go figure it out together, right? Go figure it out together. Go screw it up together, but get it done, right? Who cares? Get it done. Get something accomplished. Get it under your belt. Learn from it. We don't learn anything unless we try it, right? And I know from my own experiences. I mean, there were times where I was put in a position to do things that I was like, I had no friggin' idea. But of course, I wouldn't say that. I'd call somebody. I'd be like, hey, listen, I know you know how to do this. You need to tell me how to do this because I need to not look like an idiot, right? So I think you can't. That's a big thing. We got to get our ego out of it, right? Get your ego out of the way and just jump in. Don't be afraid to screw up. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and just get your hands dirty and just do it.
That is just perfect advice. And I think everybody needs to hear this when we put it out there on the air. I want to make sure that we emphasize those words. Just do it and get out there. And I mean, you've said it. We have the technology now and we have the outlets to make it happen. So what I'm going to do now is, because we're coming to a little bit of our time, can people find you online? I do have our terrorfilms.net. Is there anything else where they can, maybe they're ready with their film and they want to see and get a shot at it and see what happens? How can they submit those films to you?
Absolutely. So if someone were to go to our website, there's actually a submission link. And so what happens is that when they go to the page, they'll see exactly what we'll ask for. It's typically just a screener link. If they've created a trailer, we'll ask for it, a little synopsis, a little poster. It's just really the basic, materials. And then what happens is that when they submit, those emails end up going to Jim. And so Jim is the one who gets all of the content and reviews it and then circles back to me on whether it's something he thinks that we should consider taking on as a distributor. At that point, I sort of engage with the filmmaker, and then, we get into things like the terms and how the model works and all that good stuff. So, but yeah, it's fairly simple. We're very accessible. We're all over social media. I mean, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok. I mean, we're out there as a brand. We're easy to find too. We're very, at least the horror label, we're very involved in the community. So we keep a full page ad in every edition of Screen Magazine, which we promote in all the time. We do a lot of paid digital ads with companies like Blue Morgan, Fangoria. So it's not hard to find us, to be perfectly honest. We're one of the very few true independent horror companies working in the digital space that's really out there.
Very, very cool. And I think you said it, filmmakers first. And you do, it looks like the model of your company is doing that. So I really do appreciate your time today and you taking that just to talk to us. And I think we're going to get a lot of that. I'm going to get ready and, get motivated. And I hope someone watching out there is doing the same thing.
Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us on this edition of Scranton Talks. And thank you so much to Joe for joining us and setting aside the time. We really appreciate it. We have some wonderful events coming up. So be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram to stay up to date. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to see any of our previous talks. And we also have this in podcast form on multiple platforms, wherever you get your podcasts. So you can just listen along instead of watching if you prefer that. Independent Film Creative Hub is for you, geared to help filmmakers reach their potential and becoming successful creative artists. So be sure to visit us at ourcreativehub.com. Join our directory. It's free to sign up. So, that's a wrap, and we'll see you on the next episode. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a good day.
Have a good day.
I want to know about Joe Dain, and you're the only one that can tell me. What about Joe Dain?
This is going to be a good one.
Mind if I ask you a few questions? We're not here to rescue a bunch of scientists, just one.
Both your parents are dead.
We got a nickname for you, son. Flash.
Wesley thought he could contain it. It's down here for a reason.
Seriously?
They're natural. It's got a story. Want to hear it?
Oh my God.
I want to hear more.
Sound good?